All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Alain Dumonceaux, who is the Purposeful Action Mentor for the Awakened Man movement. Alain, how you doing?
Really good. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks so much for asking. And we'd like to jump right in. So if you could start with
Yeah,
telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
absolutely. Geez, my whole career I've spent in hospitality. I always loved being working in kitchens and restaurants, and so I think that just came from years and years of watching it, cooking shows on TV. And I'm in my mid 50s, so it's long before it was food TV was popular and all that. But when what I do now today from a profession, what I still enjoy doing and having lots of fun is having people over and hosting them in my home and cooking for them and preparing meals. It's always great to see put smiles on people's faces and see them enjoying a good time when with all that effort that you're putting in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And is that what you do for fun, or is it also part of a business slash profession that you run slash do every day?
Yeah, I'm more today. More my day job is more about managing larger operations. So I don't get a chance to do what I truly love and passion, which is actually cooking and that and being a chef. And so I get to take the business part out of it and really do it more for enjoyment and then pleasure. And so I like the idea of having people over. As a matter of fact, we're having some folks over this evening, and looking forward to preparing a outstanding meal and have a few drinks, a few laughs, and we'll see how the evening goes.
There we go. Sounds like it'll be fun. What is your favorite thing to cook?
I really enjoy cooking seafood. So I live and grow up. I've grown up and I live in the middle of the prairies here. So I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So saying for a prairie boy that maybe you would be more something more like pork or beef and chicken. But I really enjoyed working with seafood, salmon. We get some beautiful salmon out of British Columbia, Canada, up here, and it's just phenomenal. I love cooking with that Arctic char. My home province has some great Arctic char, which is just a phenomenal fish. And so, yeah, I really enjoy cooking that.
There we go. There we go. Well, tell us a bit more about the Awakened Man movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started the Awakened Man movement a few years ago when my marriage was on the brink of being getting divorced. Things were not going well. There was infidelity happening in the marriage, and we needed to really get back to figure out what it is that was what we wanted as a couple. And so it really forced me to look at how I was showing up as a husband, and honestly I wasn't showing up very well. And which is interesting because 30 years earlier I had been married to my high school sweetheart, and that marriage fell apart, and because I was so career and goal oriented, and I thought I had learned some lessons along the way, but it was obvious that I hadn't. So that was the first piece. The second piece that happened in a really short period of time after that is that my father-in-law passed away, and him and I were so close. I was the son he never had, and so we'd go on road trips and that together. And then when we lost him, I just had nowhere to turn. I had all these things that were falling down around me, and there was just nowhere to go. And I went down the road of grief counseling and doing some other work, but there's just something about being able to share your thoughts and what's going on with you with other men, and there just wasn't that avenue for people. And so I decided to fill that void and to give an opportunity for men to come in and be in a safe space where it's free of shame, blame, and judgment, and they get an opportunity to really work on the things that are truly important to them. They may not be able to share with their spouses and their partners and their really close friends. It's interesting how we can do that in amongst strangers. But that's what the work is really about, helping men get centered with who they are as in their masculine essence and who they are as men, get them back on track to accomplishing the life that they've always dreamed of, and really helping them get back and raise to the level of fathers, husbands, and entrepreneurs.
I gotcha, man. I love that. And so sounds like you hinted at your motivation there a little bit. It's linked to, some stuff that happened in your past and then helping people kind of avoid that or get through it if they're going through it. But if you had to sum up what gets you up and keeps you going every day, what would that be?
Yeah. What gets me up every morning is knowing that there's an opportunity for me to change one person's life. I just think it's so important that it really, my heart aches when I see men struggling, and because I can totally empathize and relate with being there. And so every day I get up knowing here's an opportunity for me. If I show up with the right mindset, if I show up with the right heart set, that if anybody that I encounter, there's opportunity for me to help guide them from the darkest parts of their moments of their lives, and that's really what drives me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about why you think, we're so quick to be able to get in a room of strangers when the environment is set up right and share intimate details about our life, but sometimes it's hard to talk to our closest friends and family.
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I think what I've recognized in doing this work is that, and especially even for myself, is that we talk about there's 5 different levels of intimacy, right? And what they are is that when we talk about intimacy, it's really about how we're stepping in and sharing. So the first level, a base level, is having safe communications, and these are the types of communications you'll have with people that you may not know, so you may not be totally open, but you'll start there. Then what happens is that as you get more comfortable, you'll start to have conversations where you're be participating, but you're really talking about what other people are saying and other people's beliefs. And so we're just not ready to open up. And that also will happen if you've had some trauma within your relationships. And so we're nervous about, as men, that if we reveal too much ourselves to who are close friends or family, they may think that they may have this different perspective of who we are.
Hmm.
And so when you were getting involved in a group where there's nothing really at stake, I don't really know these people. I can then move into this third level, and this third level is I can start to share my own personal beliefs and opinions about things, and that's really where you start to see people open up about stuff, and that happens within some friends and peers groups. But generally speaking, we're still not revealing everything about who we are. We want to protect ourselves a little bit. And then the next level, that fourth stage, is really about we start to share my feelings and my beliefs about stuff. And when we really get in there and start doing that, now we're starting to open up our hearts, and we're willing to put it out on the table. And if you've been in any type of relationships in the past and had your heart broken, it can be really hard for men to be able to get to that stage. And so we'll protect ourselves by not necessarily revealing. But the work that we do, and the work that we're focused on, is helping men get to this last level. And this last level is really getting them to be able to share about their needs, their emotions, and their desires. And when we can get men to raise that and get to that point and have that kind of comfort, especially with close family and friends, then we can start to see the relationships transform from being transactional to being much more intimate, much more personal. And so I find that when working with men's group, because there isn't really anything on the table for them, and that doesn't mean that guys come in and they're willing to bare their soul at the start of meeting in strangers, but it does give them the opportunity, when they see that being modeled, that they know that it's safe. And we don't always have that feeling when it comes from friends and family, because we're fear of being judged. And that's why I started off by saying the movement's really about giving a container, a space for men to be able to share the deepest parts of themselves, free of shame, blame, and judgment.
I love that. I love how when you model it, people will actually understand and know that it is a safe space. Because you can say it's a safe space all you want, but if it's not modeled, some people will believe you, but most won't, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm also curious. You said the end goal is sharing about their needs, emotions, and desires with close family and friends. So then it's taking that vulnerability outside of the group and taking
Mm-hmm.
it to people that you love, um, care about, and live daily life with. The question there is, we're not sharing those needs, emotions, and desires right now because we don't feel safe. And so, is there a circumstance where it is just not safe, or is it always an individual that needs to kind of be more comfortable with being vulnerable? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Like, is the environment actually not safe enough to share these things, or is it always an individual growth point that is needed to get to the point where you can be vulnerable again? Or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are going to be times where it's going to be extremely toxic, and the relationship's extremely toxic. And depending on the kind of man that you are, and some guys may not be happy when I'm going to say this, but the reality is that some of us are just so used to it. Right now. We're just getting ready to launch into our next month's talk is about dealing with the four horsemen of men's lives, and that's all based on Moore and Gillette's work and King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And when we realize that we're working from boy psychology, and we're still have all this fear for us, then it's probably not the best. And you're in a toxic relationship, whether that be a work environment relationship or a personal relationship. The choice may be to instead is to be able to leave that relationship. Now, we don't profess to try to break up for relationships and families, but if that's truly the position that you're at in life, and it's that toxic that you just need to get out, then that's most likely going to be the best decision. If you've been able to mature a little bit more and you have a better control and understanding of who you are as a man, even in those situations, you can still step forward and you can still start to own your place in it. And how we do that is by really helping guys understand how to set healthy boundaries, putting places in place, so that the people that we're interacting with understand what the limits are of what you're willing to accept, what you're not accept. Now, this isn't about us giving ourselves the opportunity to be difficult and to be assholes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're truly in a position where you're not able to express yourself, then you need to be able to define what the playing field looks like and what you're willing to accept for behavior and not accept. And that also means that you need to be able to model that as well. And so there's a continuum that goes through, but if you're truly stuck into that boy mentality and you haven't matured enough, then you're going to struggle in those relationships. So the work you're going to need to do is for sure is going to be on yourself, but it's probably not going to be working well in that relationship because you've trained them that this is who you are. And as you start to change, you may not have the intestinal fortitude to go through the muck that you're going to have to go through. And that's some of the work that we can help guys through, but it's really about a mental state of where they're at. And so we always advocate that there's different ways to go at it. And it really depends on the mental state and where they're at. And are they able to take that next step? And it may take a while before they're ready to do that.
I like what you said about having the intestinal fortitude to go through the muck you might have to get through, because it's not to say that like relationships that are toxic for a reason. It's not like there are just some inherently toxic relationships and then some inherently good relationships. It's like certain inputs lead to certain outputs. And so you've trained them one way, they've trained you one way, and now there's just a toxic dynamic there. It's not to say that dynamic can't be redeemed, but the stuff you would have to go through, we're human. So some people just aren't willing to go through that, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing the other thing, just to, put a bow on this piece is that you have to recognize as well that even if you leave that, and these are the conversations we would have with men, is that even if you're considering that, well, I'm going to leave that relationship, the question I would ask them is, okay, in your next relationship, what's going to be the same? What's going to be the same thing that's going in that new relationship? And most of the time I get a head scratch. They don't recognize it when I say, well, you're going to be the same. Because if how often have you moved through relationships and you haven't changed and you haven't grown? So ultimately, at some stage, you have to recognize and look in the mirror and say, hey, what's my part in this? And what do I need to do to own? What do I have to own? How do I have to change in order to show up differently? And when we come from that perspective and we take responsibility for where we are, for who we are and what we aspire to become, then life changes for us, because now we're no longer saying, well, it's their fault or it's something else's fault. I'm owning my piece of it. And that's really, when you get to that perspective, that's where we can reclaim so much of our power.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially because it takes two for any dynamic to continue. So the second you change yourself, the dynamic in and of itself will not be the same. Like it's going to have to change. They're either going to have to respond and, adjust to your change, or you're just going to naturally kind of split apart until the arguing and everything just doesn't exist anymore necessarily, or whatever is kind of making that relationship toxic.
Yeah, and it's going to be messy, right? And that when you start to make that change, it's going to be messy. It's not going to look great. It's not going to feel great. I know as my wife and I were going through our challenges, right? And I started to set boundaries, start try to explain what I was willing to accept and not accept. It didn't come off very well at first for me, right? And so it really sent triggers for my wife. And so when I was able to recognize that, okay, well, now how am I triggering this event for her? That then we could have that conversation about what's going on. And so you can start to shape and frame the conversations that you're having, right? And so one of the things that we do even to this day is, we'll say, listen, I have something to say. It may not come out exactly the way I'd like it to, but this is what's on my heart. And so and then I just share. And sometimes it comes out and it's beautifully done, and other times it needed a little bit more work.
Yeah,
But we know that we both understand today that we're coming from a place of love and respect, and that we can at least move forward those times. So it's going to be messy, and that's okay. I don't know anybody that was great at doing anything the first time they started it. So you just got to be willing to get in the mud, get a little messy. Things are going to work out. They will. Ultimately, they'll work out.
for sure. Well, awesome. Let's go ahead and jump into your dreams and goals. What's your vision for the Awakened Man movement and your life?
Absolutely. So the vision for the Awakened Man movement is to change hundred of thousand lives here, men's lives, and then changing 100,000 men's lives. Then what will happen is we're going to change communities, millions of communities, and ultimately we're going to change the course of the world. And really, it's about reshaping the idea of what masculinity looks like. The old model of the patriarch, which has been totally taken the worst aspects of masculinity and really bringing in the other parts of us. And so instead of being totally aggressive which has society's portrayed what masculinity is all about, it's about being assertive. It's a different way of coming. It's about inviting conversations. It's about standing strong in our beliefs, the values and desires, but also with an invitation. And so ultimately that's the goal, is to change hundreds of thousands of lives. And then for me personally, the goal is to continue to evolve and model what the next iteration of Alain looks like. And as long as I continue to do that, that gives permission for others to grow and change as well.
Oh my gosh. Your name is Alan, not Elaine.
Hey, that's all great, brother.
I am so sorry.
It's a French pronunciation, and it's fine. You're actually pretty close pronouncing it with a French accent, so it's pretty close, my friend.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh man. Well, okay. So continue to change and model the next version of Alan, yourself.
Yeah.
And then change 100,000 men's lives, and then that goes to changing millions of communities, which ultimately will end up changing the world and just reshaping the narrative around masculinity.
Correct.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Any other dreams and goals that you want to chat about?
Yeah, you know what? I'd really like to, other dreams for me is that really have a strained relationship with my eldest son. He struggles with making healthy decisions around drugs and alcohol, and continues to struggle with in and out of incarceration. And so, a dream for me would be for us to rebuild a relationship that's been strained since he's been 5 years old, and and be able to truly be able to hold him again and have him know that even though today he doesn't necessarily believe the depth of my love for him, that he knows that he's always been loved and cared for, and that doesn't mean I always need to agree with everything that he does. And so, hopefully there's that opportunity that we can be able to rebuild that sometime in our lives together while we're on this big ball of mud, and that would be really great. And that's probably the biggest one for me from a personal perspective. And other than that, my other son is I have two sons, and the other he's doing really well, and I really enjoy the time we spend together. And so for me, rebuilding and creating family network and helping grow that for them as they get a little older. Now they're just each going to be getting into their 30s, and starting families of their own, and being able to be that get to play the role of grandpa. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it'll take to rebuild that relationship with your eldest son?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's going to take more patience from my end. I think it's going to take more work in helping for me to understand the struggles that he's going through, to use better language when we do get an opportunity to converse. Uh, there's most of this stuff is really on my part about how I want to show up,
Mm,
but also on his end is, hoping that he gets that opportunity that he can see the other ass of the other side of the coin, which is that the times that we have to say no when asking for money and needing things, knowing it's going to a bad place, that it's not done out of anything to be harmful or malicious to them, but it's out of intent. And so I think those are the things that need to happen, and stay in communication with them as best that I can. Communication lines works both ways, right? So as long as he's willing to pick up the phone when I
yeah.
call, then then I think there's always opportunity for that relationship to be rebuilt.
Yeah. Absolutely. Are you guys close to each other, like distance wise?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we are. He's unfortunately he's incarcerated right now. Fortunately and unfortunately, at least it's somewhat of a safer place than living
Yeah.
on the streets. It's kind of a catch-22.
Hmm.
And so yeah, he's 2 hours away,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and so it's not far.
I have a very similar situation with my little brother.
Mm,
He's been kind of in and out of jail, on and off of drugs, maybe has some mental health issues.
yeah.
Um, and it's just rough. And I guess my question to you is, one of the things I've noticed for me is just a lack of consistency in his life, but
Mhm.
it's also because it's a lack of like him both welcoming me and then me just showing up. Then I'm like, well, if I showed up and I showed up the right way, in a way where he is able to receive it, he would allow me to show up consistently in his life. But I think part of that has just been, uh, I'm also building my own life, like fairly young, just got married, all that good stuff.
Right on.
But
Congrats.
thank you, appreciate it. Um,
Yeah, it's a great it's a struggle, Tim, and because while the work is on our part, I always come back to what's ours to own, right? And ours
mhm,
to own is to be there. And so even though there'll be times, and we're going through a spell right now, a season where he just doesn't want to communicate with me,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean when the phone rings and I recognize the number that I'm going to not talk to him, right? And that would have been the old Alan. I would have done that years ago, right? Like like I said, he's just getting to be 30. He's been struggling with this since he was 15. And so there was a time, in the early days where, yeah, I wasn't as receptive because I thought the tough love aspect was going to be, and really harsh tough love, not coming from a heart-centered place, didn't help him at all, right? It just what it did, it just created more of a wedge. And so it's just about being open and being available. Then they need to do their part too. They need to be willing. And so that's and that's the kind of conversation to have, not always wanting to hear it, but it's about how the message is delivered,
yeah,
and just being available for them. Ultimately they'll make the choice one way or another.
absolutely, absolutely. Last question, then we'll kind of move through the rest of the questions of the podcast.
Yeah.
What radical act of love do you think you could consistently do that he would eventually open up to receiving in his life? Because I know you guys aren't necessarily on kind of points of communication right now, but is there something separate from the whole situation of him like being stuck in drugs, alcohol, being incarcerated, just a radical act of love that you could do consistently that might start to open up his heart? 'Cause I'm trying to think of one for my brother and I just can't. So I'm asking you.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great question. Jeez. There's a season right now. We just said there's a season right now where he's not calling. But on the other side of that coin, neither am I. And I think that, and because he just went through a real tough moment, um, for me, that radical piece would be to, because I know where he is to go see him and pick up the phone and call him
Yeah.
and just talk to him. and have a truly deep conversation about, again, about what what my values are, how I want to be able to support him, what I'm willing to do and not do. And and really that boils down to, for the not do, is just, it's just about giving him money until he's getting help. And that sounds transactional, but we're dealing with a situation in life where
Yeah.
I'll always pick up the phone and I'll always answer and I'll be there. But there does need to be some other side, that other side of the coin, and that's really what the boundaries piece is. And so right now, the most radical thing to do is that I'm pretty sure he feels that he's totally abandoned, and it would be for me to call him and just to open that door and let him know that that's not the case.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Well, any other dreams or goals that you want? Thanks for sharing that, by the way. I really appreciate that. Any
No,
other
no worries.
any other dreams or goals that you want to chat about before we move on?
Yeah, no, that's really the top things on my mind now. For dreams and goals, I used to have lots of them, but as I'm getting a little bit older now, I'm really focused on those things that means the most. So
Yeah, absolutely. What are the top 1 to 2 skills that you need to develop? 1 to 2 skills that you need to develop right now to make some of these dreams and goals come true?
that's great. Great question. I think the first skill I need to develop is just getting better at putting myself out there and talking to people. So I really like to get. I have my own podcast that I host, and it's interesting when you're the interviewer, how much, for me, anyways, how much more comfortable it is to be on that side of the microphone.
Yeah,
So to be on this side and being the interviewee is stuff I need to do more, and so I need to really build this skill, get better at get better at this aspect of it. So also get better at going out and sharing my story. I know, recognize that the few times that I do go out and I am talking about it, that some of the stories tend to sound too similar, and so I got to work on driving some more interest in that. And so I think that's the one skill for sure, is to get out there. And the other one is, whenever you're building any business, is really got to get good at marketing and really understanding and honing in on who that avatar is. And so while I'm dealing and helping men, it's still pretty broad, and they're still refining that work today.
yeah, yeah. What are some ways you think you could narrow down that ideal target avatar, or have you narrowed down that ideal target avatar? Because men, there's like 3.5 billion of us or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's really key for me is about men that have gone through a significant emotional event. So it's something that's really changing, forcing them to look in the mirror. And so that usually ends up by happening in a few different ways. One, they're either at a career that's totally stagnated, or they're in a career transition moment in their life. Two, their relationship, most likely a marriage or a long-term relationship, is on the brink of divorce. And three, their own personal goals, dreams, and aspirations. They wake up one day, they're in their whatever age group, 20s, 30s, 40s, probably not so much in the 20s. I have some 20s, 20 somethings, but mostly it's mid 30s to 55 ish. And we recognize that all the things I thought I wanted to do as a teenager and in my early 20s, what happened to my life? And it's just gone by because we've taken things so much for granted. We've whittled away time. And so now we're at this stage in our lives where significance is starting to creep in. We're starting to think about, how am I going to work? If I keep going like this, I'm going to have to work into my 70s or 80s. And so it's really about helping them reshape, reimagine who they are as men and what the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like. So
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. So, emotionally traumatic event, typically around divorce. Is that right?
yeah, it can be around divorce. The relationship might not be at that stage yet. I can tell you, most of the guys that come to me now are generally coming because they're in relationship trauma. They're on the brink of divorce. They're on the verge of getting separated. Some of them are actually in that stage today, and they just don't know what to do. They see that the relationship and the damage they've done, for this particular relationship may be irreparable. And so they're trying to figure out, where does that leave them? So much of our identities are wrapped up into those three things. That's why I really focus on career, relationship, and ourselves, that we have ideas of who we are based on these things, and when those things start to change, and that's where we put all this energy, then it's hard for us to see the other aspects of that we bring to the table. And so really, it's about, in that mode, that transition piece, that place when they can't see the forest for the trees, that they really need someone to guide them out or guide them through it. And the program, that's really the program is. And so I have two different versions of it. One's a group mentorship. That's our band of brothers. We get together on a monthly basis, and that's an opportunity for them to share and work with other men and hear similar stories and hear how they're coping and dealing with things. And then I bring lessons that help drive different aspects, to have them poke at them to think differently about different areas. And then I have a one-on-one mentorship program where they get to really dive deep on a particular aspect of their life, a pillar that they can focus on, and that can help lift the standards they're showing up. And it's a lot more intense for them, because there's a lot more accountability in that piece, because there's regular check-ins over the course of 90 days. And so there's different ways for them to be able to plug in and work through their moments.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, cool. So men, typically 35 to 55, but can be on the younger side, that are going through some sort of relationship trauma, are either on the brink of divorce or currently going through the process.
That's right.
Okay. That's a lot more specific than the men we were going with before.
Yeah.
Like it.
It's an interesting, that's not where it started, but you know what? That's where it ultimately ends up by being. I think it's truly one of the most important relationships we have in our lives, right? We have significant, you're newly married, you said, and man, that's all the things that can go wrong will go wrong. Get married, start a job, start a career, a business like you're doing, and now have kids.
Yep.
Lots of stuff's going to go on, brother.
Yeah.
It's going to challenge you to show up in lots of different ways.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, awesome. What are the highest impact daily actions you can do to tick the needle forward towards your dreams and goals?
Yeah, is to take one step of moving yourself forward on a particular target that you're looking to achieve. So one of the things for me right now, as I was talking earlier about, is getting in front of other people. And so we both use a similar platform to reach out to folks. And so every day I spend time looking at who are the matches for me, what are some podcasts that I could be on to help spread the message, and then to reach out and do that. And so that's the one task that I do. And I think it really comes down to being specific enough about one goal. And so when we can take our life and break it down into, or that ultimate goal, break it down to what are the steps before each of the next step, then we can go, okay, what's the first thing I do? And so that's one of the things I focus on right now, is going through the different avenues of finding podcasts that I could be on that makes sense for the topic, for my topic, and then to get out there and reach out and speak with folks.
Gotcha. Reaching out to people on Podmatch. Nice. And what character trait do you most need to develop right now to make that dream life come true?
Yeah, I think, believe it or not, there's still some confidence character that needs to be built in there. And the challenge with that is that, well, like I said, it seems to be all right when you're the facilitator and you're the interviewer, but when the spotlight's on you, you really get an opportunity to see your own vulnerabilities. And so again, I go back to this modeling piece and wanting to be able to express the challenges that we all face. Like, the work that we do is not a guru program. I don't believe in following gurus. There's lots of mentors. Mentors are a different thing. And I think it's really important for us to become our own guru, to really understand who we are. And so that's really ultimately comes down to being able to understand where you're coming from, and then be able to step into that vulnerability. And so for me, it's truly about being on I'll call it the other side of the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. And so, if you had the confidence that you're lacking or you think you're lacking, how would you show up differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. How would I show up differently?
Would it
I
just
just
feel
do this more.
different, or would it?
Yeah, I would just do more of it.
Yeah,
Honestly, like the rush. I'm always excited. I think anybody, and I know I can remember reading. I think I'm a hockey fan, so I think Bernie Parent, he was a goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers, back in the '70s, and they used to. I was reading a story about him, and he used to throw up before
yeah,
every game, like through his whole career. And I think that's okay, right? And Bernie was a pretty good goalie, won a couple of Stanley Cups, with the Flyers. And so it doesn't matter what level we're at, we're always going to be nervous. And I think it's about recognizing that there's a difference between having paralyzing fear and just having some fear. And fear is just a matter of as an opportunity for us to get prepared.
yeah,
And that's what it really is saying. It's just preparing you. Okay, have you done your homework? Are you ready to go? And even if it's not perfect, and that's perfectionism is probably an even better answer to your previous question, is just to go forward and do it, right? And use the old Windows model of Windows 1.0, 1.5, like all softwares like that, right? They just launch it,
yeah,
and get the reps in and get the work done, and because that's how we get better. But what if we sit back and I wait for the perfect right moment? Then it's never going to happen.
for sure, for sure. Well, if there were one or two people you could meet right now, it could be a specific person or a type of person, and they'd really help you take that next step towards your dreams and goals. Who would they be, and how would they help you?
You put in your podcast notes there, you had Alex Hormozi, and I think Alex would be the guy for me to go meet. Now, I think Alex would probably kick me in the ass a bit on
Uh-huh.
with my mindset and where I'm at. He's a pretty intense dude. But what I really appreciate about Alex is that he has lots of wisdom. You can tell that he's truly a consummate salesperson, and but he would shoot you straight, and that would be the guy that whatever it would take, I would buy him dinner just to pick his brain a little bit and have him poke at me a little bit about the work that I need to get done.
I got you. I got you. What do you think Alex Hormozi would tell you to change about your life right now to get the results that you want?
Yeah, he'd tell me to get after it and get the reps in, make more calls. I'm not doing enough. I'm
Yeah,
not I'm not putting myself out there enough just to get out there and do that work. Alex seems to be, from everything that I've listened to on his podcast, the game is he just seems you just got to go ahead and do it. He always tells a story about his young neighbor there and bringing him into his organization and just getting him to do the reps, and because that's how you get better and that's how you learn, and to ask lots of questions. Don't go in here looking to get paid the highest amount. Just get in there and
yeah,
learn, I'm positive that's what he would say.
for sure, for sure. Get the reps in. Get the reps in. Um, well, nice. Is there a calling function to your sales process, or is it mostly the marketing, the DMs?
Yeah, it's mostly marketing and DMs for sure.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, that brings me back to a question I was gonna ask with the confidence thing. How many more podcasts would you do? Like, what would your number be per week if you were at peak confidence?
At peak confidence that I'm on.
Yeah, that you're the spotlight on these podcasts. How many are you going for per week?
Right now it'd be great to do one a week. So,
Oh, I
right.
gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm probably maybe one a month, maybe one and a half a month. And so it needs to be one a week would be great. Then I host my own one a week. And so I think that type of consistency would really move the needle forward. It would help me get sharper. Like I really appreciate you asking the question today about the avatar. It forces me to think and consider exactly what it is my game plan is, and so I think get that thing to once a week and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, for sure. Something that I was thinking about, Alex Hormozi actually talks about kind of 6 ways to reach out to people. you're either doing one-to-one, like cold calling, cold emailing, cold, DMing, cold whatever, right? You're posting content, you're paying for ads, you have affiliates, you have referrals, or you have there was one more. I don't remember the other one. But
Yeah.
anyway, what I was thinking about is the fact that you could, since most of your people have relationship issues, you could partner with like divorce attorneys. So
Mhm.
then it gives you like a cold outreach factor of your, because I don't know how many divorce attorneys there are in the United States, but or Canada, because you're in Canada,
Yeah.
you could reach out to, if you got 1,000 on your list and they sent you one customer a year, what would that do to your business?
Yeah, I could retire my day job.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, just a
Abs-
thought.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, and there are those you can like do cold emails where it's like it's pretty simple. You could probably spend 20, 30 minutes a day compiling a list and then shooting out a cold email to that list. And because their emails are going to be online,
Yeah,
they want people to contact them. So you never know. Give them some commission or some sharing or whatever. I don't know.
exactly.
I also don't know if that would be counter to what they want because I don't know if divorce attorneys actually want people to get divorced. It seems like they don't have a job if people aren't getting divorced. So there's a bit of that too. But
Yeah, I think the divorce rate's pretty similar in
mhm,
Canada as in the U.S. There's still
plenty of
pretty
people.
high. They're still pretty high. I don't think they'll be. It's kind of like being. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like being in the mortuary business. There's always people getting divorced.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you. I got you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's about a perspective too, right? It's about coming by and they may not solve it, may not save the divorce, but
Yep.
the work is about focusing on saving that men, that guy. Men, I've found in some of the research is that especially as we get older, if we get divorced in our 50s, it can be really traumatic, and a lot of times what'll end up by happening, I don't, like I said, I don't have all of the stats in front of me, but homelessness is something that's pretty, like, is right on that doorstep for guys, because so much of their lives and their identity has been put into this marriage. And when that falls down, then they don't have anywhere to go, because as guys we don't have a great network. We don't necessarily reach out and talk to our friends about
Yep.
stuff. Our friends don't have a hot clue what's going on, and so when everything falls apart, they can be in a really bad place. And so there's places for professional therapy. That's not what we do. We do something completely different. We're not trained therapists in that aspect, but what we do bring is community, because men will lack that aspect. They may have one or two friends, but like I said, we're not really willing to share all the intimate details of the stuff going on.
Yep.
And whereas women along their lives, right, they have that community. They always have that group of friends that they can always lean on. And we haven't learned how to do that very well as men. And so I think there's, really, to, as I'm rambling on here, I think there's opportunity for lawyers to still stay in business and to help a few dudes get through their tough seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely. Well, now we're gonna jump into our thriving three. And so these are some just quick hitter questions just to know a little bit more about you and how you thrive. So what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one.
Yeah, I'll take a book. And if you don't mind me, I'm just going to reach it down here.
Yep.
Hopefully you'll be able to see this. So this book by Mandino, University of Success.
Mm,
It's 50 books, the greatest self-help books written ever. And I'm a big highlighter and notes. And when I was in my deepest the darkest days, this book literally saved my life.
mm.
Literally saved my life, and it's why it's beside me all the time. I go back to it. Like some of the books in here, are the go back to Acres of Diamonds, if you know that story. Like, they're not. It's interesting. These are just all real short stories, but just phenomenal. And so I just think when you find something that helps you. So if I was to, say if there's one thing, this would be it. I listen to lots of podcasts, and I've become pretty avid reader.
Yeah.
Uh, since my 30s, really since my first marriage to my high school sweetheart ended, and I just started going on this journey of trying to discover, like, how can you be so successful in your professional life but your personal life sucks. And I came across that book and by Og, and it just really helped get me on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And what's one way you like to take care of yourself?
Yeah, for me, one way for sure is to I do meditation, and so I really enjoy meditating. It gives me opportunity to clear my mind. I'm actually in a spiritual class right now just to help strengthen and deepen my understanding of spirit overall, and to get a better connection. I think in life, ultimately, it's a do-it-yourself project. That doesn't mean we do it by ourselves. It means we do it for ourselves. And doing it for ourselves means we have to recognize at some stage in our life, we have to recognize that there's a power greater than us that is making everything move. And when we can plug into that and get that connection, like, gets a little easier for us to manage. And so that's the big piece for me right now.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Meditation hits a bit different, and just like just being still, quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and like, or getting into kind of a flow, or just getting more in touch, present. That's really what it is. Getting present.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
well, what is one action step you can take right now or continue to take if you're already doing it to meet and get advice from Alex Hormozi?
What's one step I could do? You know what? I could I could shoot a little video message to Alex on Instagram and just say, "Hey, brother, I need love the work, and I would really like to bend your ear for 15 minutes and truly keep it to 15 minutes and not make it become an hour." Because we all know that that happens, and he's not a big fan of that either.
Yeah. 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 Trying to think. You could also just build a $3 million company and he'll just buy equity in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's the next step.
Yeah. Either build a $3 million company, he'll buy equity in it, or what was he saying? Oh, I don't know. He was on the podcast with Andy Frisella recently,
Yeah.
and he talks about, getting in the room with wealthy people, of which he is one now, of like just making sure you can find a way to add value to their life, and then you do it, and then you give
Yes.
it to him. So I don't know what he needs that he doesn't have, but if you could find that out, do it, and then give it to him, it would be
That's
you would definitely get that 30 minutes.
yeah, that's so true. Exactly. What does Alex need right now? That's a really good. I don't know. Think he needs anybody to wash his car, and he lives too far away from me. So
Yeah. Maybe he just needs a hug. Maybe you find
yeah,
him.
maybe. Amen.
There we go. Well, awesome. Now we're gonna jump into our final section of the podcast. This is it gets a bit more personal. So
Sure.
it won't get more personal than we've already gotten, but you know, if you want to pass on any of them, just say I want to pass, and I'll be like, okay, cool.
No worries.
What is one limiting belief that continues to pop up in your life, if any?
Yeah, you know what? For sure, it's not being good enough. The work isn't good enough. The quality isn't high enough. The anything that has to do with not good enough, and that's still the limiting belief. And and even today, as we get started here, there's a couple of moments there I'm stumbling on words, and it's okay, right? In the early days of doing this, I probably would have crawled into a shell and not gone on a podcast for 6 months. But the
Yeah,
truth of the matter is that it is a limiting belief, and you can't get we won't get better by thinking it through. We get better by doing it through. And so it's about stepping into that uncomfortableness and taking in getting those reps in.
gotcha, gotcha. And where does that not being good enough come from?
Yeah, I think it really comes back to for me, it comes back to childhood. I always struggled with I love my parents to death, and they were there to take care of us as kids. I'm the oldest of five, but they never really participated in anything that we did. And I was a big sports fan as a young guy. And when my senior year, when I came from a really small town, and we had never made it outside of our own little area. And when we made it to provincial finals in basketball, and we had an opportunity to win it, and then we lost it and placed second, I carried that with me for years, thinking that I just wasn't good enough to be the best, right? And the
Mhm.
reality of the situation is that no team from that school ever before, from a basketball perspective or a court sport perspective, has ever done what we did.
Mm.
And so it took a while to recognize that the frame that we put around the stories can be changed. And
Yeah.
when we don't change that frame, it can lead us down a path in life to make different, and how we base all of our decisions, and the types of decisions we make. And so when I was able to finally recognize that, that was still pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay, and then that took me to my culinary career. And there was actually there's actually still today an Olympics for culinarians. And I won a couple of silvers in the early 90s. And again, they weren't gold, but let me tell you, it's not too many chefs that I know even have that, can say that they've won silver medals at a world culinary competition. And
Bro, you must
so,
be an excellent chef.
yeah, there was a time in my day I wasn't too bad.
Dang, that's epic.
Yeah. But it's just a framework, right? It's the frame that we put around it, right? Oh, well, it's not a gold, so it's not good enough. Where'd you come up with that story, Al? Well,
Yeah.
I know where I came up with that story. And it
Uh,
doesn't serve me, right? It doesn't serve the work that you're doing. And when we can really recognize that, man, you got to change the frame, because
yeah,
it's limiting.
I gotcha. Do you have any limiting actions or inactions that reinforce this belief in your life?
Yeah, for sure. It's when I book a podcast interview and then I cancel it
Yep.
because I didn't get a chance to prepare. And even this morning, as I was, it's as we're getting ready for today, and I'm looking, and I booked it in a relatively short period of time, and then I saw, oh man, Tim's got all these questions. Am I going to be ready for it? Let's just do it.
Yep.
It's like, let's just do it, and come from the heart, and everything works out. So for sure, it's just to suck it up and just push through.
Gotcha. If you were to change the belief that you're not good enough
Mm-hmm.
into an abundant phrase that really spoke to your heart in the way that you needed to hear it, what would that phrase be?
Mm-hmm. That the phrase would be that all my needs are met, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, in all my business affairs, and in all my relationships. And as I come from that place of abundance, then I know that all is well in my life. And uh, and I say that because it's one of the prayers that I say on a daily basis.
Hmm. And is that the prayer you go back to when your limiting beliefs start to take over, or what do you do to kind of take back control? Thoughts or actions you resort to?
Yeah, I'll come back to that prayer, and that really it's about all my needs are met, and that the spirit will guide me with the right words to say, and that I don't that nothing needs to be scripted. Just allow myself to be in present, as we talked about earlier, and be willing and open to receiving whatever comes through me, and gets put into this podcast.
All righty. We got one last question for you. You ready? What is your favorite belief about yourself?
You know what is that? I'm pretty darn persistent,
Hmm.
and I've built resilience, and so persistency and resilience is really the one belief that, even though it may not look great today, and it may not be what I may feel is not the best work, that as long as I continue to persevere and move through and learn and grow, then things get better. And so I always come back to I always come back to that. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get to that perspective, and other times it comes right away.
Yeah, for sure. Well, awesome. That's all we got for you, Alan. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Ah, man, thank you so much, Tim, for having me on the show. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Of course, yeah, it was great to have you on. And is there anything else you want to chat about before we sign off?
No, just if anyone wanted to reach out and get a hold of the information, we're at theawakenedman.net. That's where all the hub is, and we can find all our information. And if there's anything I can do to help you get through a difficult season in your life, then for sure do reach out.
Sounds good. If you guys were listening to this podcast, you loved what Alan had to say, make sure to reach out to him, hit him up. All the links to do so will be down in the show notes. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.